Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So in this episode, we have Harlan returning. In fact, he's actually the one that hires Sherlock and Watson. I love that basically it all turned. It's kind of weird because he's the one putting it out there like, oh man, like I don't want anyone, because it's like, oh, the student of mine, Lily, is going missing. And if she has gone missing, I know it's going to be me that's the number one suspect, which is an interesting thing because, it turns out to be true. But it's kind of like, yeah, did that only happen because, well, there's many different reasons that it kind of happened. It's kind of because Sherlock got on him, like, because like for the past 2 years, I've heard you do nothing but talk about this girl. It's like either break the rules or find a job somewhere else so you can be with her. But at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, the fact of the matter is maybe because she's kind of like an unattainable goal, maybe that's okay. Like maybe he likes that, because for one, it's like, you can admire her from afar without, getting your heart broken, which I can get behind. I can understand. It's like, as someone who probably plenty of times throughout my life, I should have just been like, no, just tell the girl how you feel. It's been that situation like most of my life. So I can understand that mentality of like, no, it's okay. I can admire her from afar, which in retrospect is like, and kind of look at Harlan's situation like, yeah, granted, I never went to the extent Harlan was because like teachers and students had to call him out because it's like, oh man, giving her special attention, giving her those longing eyes, and stuff like that, following her on social media to the extent is like I've never gone to that extent, but like I said, the base of that aspect I can kind of get behind and stuff like that. So I love that kind of irritated Sherlock a little bit because it's like he technically, in a way, if he had admitted his feelings for Lily, maybe that would have made this whole situation less weird in the situation it is. To be fair, it probably still would have screwed him over, but it's just kind of interesting. He brought them in on the case and everything, and it turns out, oh yeah, the FBI in particular is looking into it because it turns out to be a kidnapping case, and he kind of smacks down to him. Because at first I was like, why did the FBI get involved? I was like, right, kidnapping case, right. So Lily got kidnapped. I won't lie to you, I honestly thought Lily was behind this. There was a part of me, like I even wrote it in my notes. I was like, early, thought, theory, Lily's fine. Just the whole like drink cans and stuff, like the fact that she escaped and everything. She seemed a little too calm in my opinion. Plus the fact is that she went to Harlan first kind of made you go, yeah, that seemed a little weird. Like part of me like felt like she was just making excuses. I was like, we're going to find out she's the one orchestrated this whole thing. Turns out not the case at all. But I was like, oh, I was so sure of it because I was like, just because she had those drinks doesn't mean they necessarily fed it to her. It could have just been like, oh, making all these lies up about like this older man. It's like as she's telling her story, I'm like, you're a liar, aren't you? You're such a liar. And it's like, oh man, she wasn't. It's just my aspect. It's just crime dramas have done that to me. It makes me suspicious of everyone. It's not, it's just these shows in general type of things, recordings and reviews, like made me super like, even if someone's like super innocent, I'm like, no, you're guilty. Like if you look back on a lot of stuff, I've done that. I've been very notorious about because I'm like, oh, this person's gonna be a bad guy. Turns out they were a good person the entire time. I'm like, man, I was completely wrong about that situation. So I was kind of wrong about Lily, which and I'm very glad to be wrong about it because it turns out her and Harlan, Harlan admitted that he cares for her because Sherlock wasn't too surprised because it's like, yeah, the fact is she's talking about checking out those FEMA maps, which I'll get to in a second. It's like she ain't checking it out because she cares about it stuff. She only cares about it because you care about it. That's what it was all about because it's like your feelings for her. It's like that's the main reason why she also went to Harlan because like felt safe with him. She knew she would be good and okay. So I was like, oh, that. So there, kind of like no matter what the circumstances, no matter I was being suspicious of her. The fact didn't matter. I think that's another reason why I would have felt bad because it's like, oh yeah, Harlan cares about you and stuff like that. And I don't know if the whole pointing things at him because I thought that might be kind of a bit of her ploy to kind of take stuff away from her. But it's like no, like it turns out none of that was the case, and it's like oh. She's a good person, so her and Harlan being worried about her and stuff like that, oh, that worked out in the end. He got super worried because he was constantly calling Charlotte to the point he got irritated. It's like, you literally called me 6 times in 1 hour, dude. So, but I love finding out what this was all about. Basically, 3 years ago, Harlan was part of a group that basically they're using math to predict weather and stuff like that, in particular, like flooding areas. And basically, they have to redraw the maps, basically, like more dangerous places, more like heavier like flooding and stuff like that, insurance and stuff like that. So a lot of like factors have to be considered, plus climate change and stuff like that. So a lot goes into the mathematics of it. Basically, they kidnapped Lily to make it so that they can redraw those maps to be beneficial to them. Because it turns out the person behind this what's his name, Melvin Hathaway, the dude who was the tenant or whatever for Jimmy. I also love the fact is that Jimmy's parole officer kept cracking jokes, and then like Watson and Bell were so straight faced that he's just cracking jokes. It's like, oh yeah, oh Jimmy, I never thought he had brains, but there they are. They're all over the place. It's like the man had his head bashed in, and you're up there cracking jokes like that. It's like, what was it that she said? Like they were asking basically, could he be the one behind this? It's like Jimmy couldn't even. I forgot what his exact words were. Basically, it was like, oh, he wouldn't be smart enough to solve this, ha ha ha. And starts laughing like they're still straight. He's like, he was simple. It's just like, wow, that is just. I don't know, that parole officer was kind of a dick about that whole situation. It's like, I think no matter what the circumstances are, it's like, man, this was a person that died. You could be a little more compassionate about it. You were just kind of coming off of that like an asshole. I just thought that was kind of interesting. But basically, Hathaway owned a business that basically someone was buying into. I think it was kind of similar to, landlording type of thing, like a building and stuff like that. And he would have gotten like a huge payout from the whole situation. But the area they were building in was going to be in a new area that was projected to be like heavily hit by flooding. And because if it was like that, they knew that eventually that might happen in the future. They wouldn't bother building it. So what he did is he changed some of the, he changed the flood patterns and stuff like that to make it so like, oh yeah, like, the build like lying about it, because apparently I thought it was kind of interesting too, learning that basically if new math comes up to debunk like what is already existing, because they were about to roll out this new map. That's why this kind of had to happen fairly soon too. It's interesting because there was another like insurance guy that was kind of a suspect, but for him it's like no. If I had the money, do you think I'd be wasting my time like trying to sell my boat? I'd be trying to keep it, but it's like that was his main alibi, was because it's like if I had the money from this whole situation, I wouldn't be bothering selling my boat right now because I would have the money to be able to pay off the payments for it and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting that the whole thing ended up being his alibi, but nevertheless. It's kind of interesting too with the whole Melvin thing, the thing that I had pointed out before with Lily about like, oh yeah, the fact that she had the drinks and everything, which was ultimately led, Sherlock and them to be able to figure out what this whole thing was about. I'd actually forgotten to talk about it. That's why Melvin ended up killing Jimmy, is because I was like, yeah, he's the one that came up with the whole kidnapping plan. That was never part of the original plan, but Jimmy, being who he is, wanted to kind of get a slice of pie. I guess it also dealt with the fact is because Jimmy is who he is, he has a terrible gambling debt. We also met Sylvia the Booker. I don't know if anything will ever come back. That might just be a one-off episode character. So, like, she was kind of thrown in as a suspect, too. Because she's got her like bingo games that Jamie was a part of, but it turned out he paid out his debt, so it wasn't an issue. So that's why I'm kind of like, yeah, it's probably just an episode thing. That's probably not a character that will probably come back or anything like that. I mean, maybe not unless we get dealing with some bookie stuff in the future as well, and that kind of comes back around. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah. Melvin was behind it. The point I got so distracted. Yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting. His ultimate undoing was the drinks he got her, because there was like some found at the place he was keeping her held. Like there was some there, so it kind of ties the whole situation together. So that was kind of neat. But on the other side of this came up an interesting thing. Like, as I brought up before, the whole Harlan and Lily situation, it brought up something to Watson that she brought up to Sherlock. She's like, yeah, you know how you're talking about the whole, like, oh, you're bothered by the whole Harlan and Lily thing? It's like, well, imagine being in my shoes, because I know that situation exactly, because I have to worry about that whole situation with you and Moriarty. And Sherlock's like, wait, what? He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're lonely. The fact of the matter is, it's like, you know how frustrating it is? Because it's like you and Fiona were dating, you were good, but it's like, oh, things didn't work out because she wasn't Moriarty. And then Sherlock's like, Watson, like almost kind of like, where the hell is this all coming from? It kind of almost did come out of nowhere, because Watson's never really talked too much about like Sherlock's dating life. Because I mean, and it's something I think I've talked about this before in these recordings, but maybe not. Maybe I'm trying to give myself too much credit. But Fiona is like the only person he's dated in the confines of this series. Like, obviously, when Moriarty was Irene and they dated, that was before the series had started. Like, it was in that time frame. But it's like, other than Fiona, which they had their time, which I was like, oh, they were good together. But there's that thing of like, well, she wasn't Moriarty. It was other than that, his longest relationship is with Watson. Because it's kind of interesting because at first I'm like, oh, he's having sex with Athena. It's like, oh, how is Athena helping you recreate the crime scene? It's like, oh, we're not. We're having sex. I'm completely forgetting about that whole beginning part I should have talked about too, where the dude who, Sherlock wasn't there. So the dude is wearing like a camera, like a iPad or whatever, a tablet as a phase, and Sherlock's there talking, and he's miming with his hands and stuff. And Sherlock's like, "No, we just had sex," and he's like thrusting and making those motions. I was like, he's so good, and it's just like poor Watson. She's laying in her bed, and it's like some random strangers coming up, waking her up. It's like, and you just let some random stranger into her house like that. I thought that was kind of nice. But her calling him out like that, like I said, it just kind of came out of nowhere. It left me literally going like, wow, that's crazy. She's calling you out about the whole relationship thing. I guess because at the very least, like, Watson has subsequently been in a relationship. She hasn't been in many. I mean, to be fair, her last boyfriend did die, so there's that. Well, technically, last two boyfriends died because Mycroft died. So, but I mean, they weren't together anymore still. But the last person she was with, it was Adam, right? Yeah, he died when that's season 3. Yeah, I want to say I think that was pretty sure that was season 3. So, and that kind of, but I mean, it's kind of interesting. It makes you wonder on some level what she's talking about herself too. But maybe she goes out on dates too. Like we know she kind of hooks up with people too. But for her, it's like I can kind of enter a relationship whenever I want to. You being who you are, Sherlock, is kind of like, it's kind of a rarity. And especially it's coming from the fact is because you don't really get many relationships because it's like there's that one girl that escaped, and that was Moriarty. And Sherlock eventually comes back later on. He kind of admits like, yeah, because for one, he was a little envious of Harlan. Like you could tell he was irritated. Even Harlan was like, are you irritated right now? It's like, no, it's just I'm in the middle of work. Got to catch the person who actually kidnapped Lily, still working on that aspect of the case, and you're kind of here. It's like, all right. But it's like, you can tell it's like, nah, hearing about your relationship, you ain't happy. You can definitely tell it did bother him. And at least he was willing to admit it. And she's like, dude, you can have what he had. And has, what Harlan has. But Sherlock's like, I don't think I can, because it's like, for him, Moriarty, despite what they know about her, she was a special breed. Like, she's the only woman that she's smart. She's amazing. Like, probably one of the few women you can honestly say that Sherlock's ever fallen madly in love with. I mean, let's not forget how distraught and broken he was after he thought she died. But even after that, because that was something else Watson brought up, it's like, the fact of the matter is, even after all this time, like, you can never be with her, but you still can't let her go. So you're still in that realm, kind of like Harlan, where it's kind of like unattainable woman. And he's willing to admit that, but it's just, and he's afraid that any relationship he goes for will never amount to, it's like, it will never be good enough because it will never be Moriarty. Which Watson's like, no, it's okay to kind of, feel like there will never be something else, a feeling like with Moriarty, but that's okay because love comes in different shapes and forms. So it's kind of like you'll find someone else who'll be somebody else. There'll be kind of a different feeling and a different vibe, so don't worry about that too much. You're very big on experiments, so experiment. Even suggesting maybe going on a dating site. But we see at the end, he asked Athena out for a date, and she was kind of caught off guard because it's like, usually we only hook up when it's like, oh, like hooking up, or you need me for, working on an experiment. He's like, I've known you for a while. You're kind of like a friend, but it's kind of like, hey, like, I'd like this, I don't know what this really is, like maybe we could take it further beyond, and she's willing to take the chance. So that's pretty nice. I'm like, hey, it'd be pretty neat to see you in an extended relationship again, because we got it for a little while. So I'm interested to see if anything happens with this whole thing. Like I said, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Once again, I was like wondering on some level, was Watson talking about herself, but at the same time, maybe it's more so because like I said, Sherlock's kind of a breed of his own, so his relationship status kind of has to be worried about more than Watson. That, like I said, maybe she's secretly in between episodes and stuff like that, dating and stuff like that. Maybe because when it comes to Sherlock, like Watson's reasons for dating have been extenuating circumstances, so kind of led to a breakup. Sherlock situation ended up being kind of like a similar thing, but then now it's kind of like, oh, there's a greater thread line to this whole thing because it's like, oh, they're not Moriarty, which is interesting. And maybe that kind of like adds more levels to that. Is the fact is that Moriarty, to a certain extent, has popped back up into the story. So that's kind of like that forbiddenness to it is still kind of probably much more in the front of his brain rather than in the back. That's just my thought process behind it. So overall, a very nice episode with everything, the case, as well as that side of things. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good